We'll get started now. Welcome to this Ekimetrics webinar on powering the evolution of grocery. We do have our full panelists online. Peter's joining us by phone at the moment, or we see if he can join through video. Having some fun with the Morrisons file, I think, in terms of the use of the webinar software. But all our panelists are with us, and really looking forward to having this discussion together. So what we're going to take you through is three main pieces. So we're going to have a short section up front on responding to trends with data analytics within the grocery sector. We're going to have a panel discussion with the experts that have really very grateful that they've joined us and sharing their time and their experience with us all. And then a chance to ask your questions. We have received a few questions already through the sign-ups, so we'll answer these. You are all in as listen only, so you can hear us and see us. But if you want to get in touch, please feel free to use the chat or submit any questions in that way, and you'll be able to do that. My name is Matt Andrew. I'm the Managing Director of Ekimetrics UK. We're a data science consultancy that support multinational businesses around the world with their data transformation agenda and their roadmap, both in building and then executing different projects on the way to increasing your data maturity. I'm going to start, first of all, with some of the trends that we've seen, and no surprise to anyone if you've been reading the news or in the sector, that the 2020 was an exceptional year for grocery, driven by the health crisis that we've seen with the COVID pandemic. So grocery retail experienced the highest growth in 26 years. The first 3 months of the pandemic, when the lockdown was initiated, saw 14.3% growth in grocery sales, which is really not seen for a very long time. Some things that were driving that: calories being consumed at home. Clearly, the shift away from working in the office, and especially lunch times and things like that, coming from the office back into the home, was a really significant factor there. And then stocking up at the beginning of that crisis, as concerns came in the ability to actually handle stock coming in, and especially around very important categories at that time like cleaning and household care. And then those changes to health and cleaning habits have actually seen consumption change very, very wildly across a number of categories. So while grocery overall has seen very strong growth, that's been tempered by declines in areas like beauty and cosmetics, but increases on things like skincare, household cleaning, soap especially, where we've seen a lot of different changes come into play. On top of that, what we've also seen is the biggest rise in e-commerce that has ever happened. E-commerce has been trending up for many years, but this has seen a real significant jump. And we heard Asda kind of at the beginning of this pandemic talk about undergoing 8 years of e-commerce transformation in the space of just 4 months through the start of the pandemic. So everyone is being very reactive and playing catch up as much as possible. And it's been very clear from all the retailers that they're doing everything that they can to service their customers in the right way and how they want to be serviced. 1 in 5 households ordered groceries online in a month. This figure from Kantar. That was a 76% increase in September versus the previous year. And really what we've seen in previous years is that this spike of e-commerce that normally happens around Christmas tends to then settle at a higher baseline for e-commerce the year after. So we're really expecting that even as markets begin to reopen, the trial and the experience of e-commerce and having on the large part very successful experiences in e-commerce is going to see a much higher baseline persist through 2021 and onwards. And so really everyone is talking about looking at 2030 level of e-commerce demand, but now working on 2020 or 2021 technologies to make that happen. So some large kind of steps to take. So that raises some challenges ahead in terms of the grocery sector and how we all respond to that. One is sustaining growth as normality returns. That very strong growth we've seen in 2020 is very much outside of the experiences we've had in the last years, and how businesses, retailers, manufacturers sustain that into 2021 and beyond is a very strong challenge to overcome, and one that investors will also be looking at very keenly. Servicing online profitably is another challenge that the whole sector has to overcome together to find the right way forwards. It's no secret that the online the e-commerce model is not as profitable for retailers as the brick and mortar one, and that is something, as e-commerce has grown so quickly, that will need to be addressed rapidly to make sure that the mutual kind of business model between manufacturers and retailers is working on all sides. We've seen a big trend towards range rationalization, or range rationalization has been a topic for many years now, but the conviction that range rationalization can go ahead and still deliver strong growth was just reinforced through COVID and through that pandemic period, as many categories experience out of stocks, but we're still being pushed through the consumption and demand that we're seeing. What that means alongside range rationalization is that we see an increasing trend for private label to be more adopted across different categories. And it means that within individual categories, and especially where private label has a very strong role, the role that your brand is playing in that category is really critical to establish a very strong role with a key differentiating factor that separates the role that private label is able to play. And then finally, one of the elements that has really come out in 2020 is the need for agility across businesses. And actually, while in every case this was forced on us as businesses through the pandemic, there have actually been a number of really positive ways and positive changes to the ways of working within organizations that have made them be more agile. Retaining that agile culture as we go into 2021 and beyond will be something really important to move away from some of the old kind of brand planning, more static and slow moving processes, and really adopting the strengths of this way of working. So what does it mean in terms of some of the ways that data can help and support? So when it comes to sustaining growth as normality returns, shopper loyalty in an e-commerce environment is a very different prospect from what it was when brick and mortar was really dominant. No longer is it predominantly about where you're physically located most closely to the nearest retailer. It's really a different perspective in terms of user experience for e-com, availability of delivery slots, the quality of the service that you're getting in terms of making sure that what is being added to a basket is actually what gets delivered through to the door. And then on the other side, revenue growth management becoming an increasingly large topic. So retailers have really taken leaps and bounds in the last years with their access to customer data and the way that they're using that, and increasingly seeing from our business as well, manufacturers coming and saying we need to accelerate and build on our own revenue growth management capabilities to really be strong partners with retailers. For servicing online profitably, delivery optimization clearly on the retailer's perspective is a very strong element where data and data science can really play a large role. And then the fulfillment mechanics of how online is actually serviced in terms of where you have dark stores, where it's better to just keep the existing store infrastructure and pick from store directly. Data is a really key and integral component to making those very strategic, long-lasting impacts on the business. Range in the brand's category role. Assortment optimization is no secret to anyone. Range optimization and assortment in an online platform where the user experience is still evolving over time, and how you can bridge the gap between the browsing experience of store versus something that is a bit more constrained when it comes to an online environment is a really key topic where data analytics plays a very strong role. And then brand distinctiveness, both how you drive that and how you measure it, and how you make sure that you're achieving a consistent, sustainable brand growth in the long term is a really important factor. And then for retaining the agile culture, we'll be talking about in the next few weeks as well this idea of multi KPI scenario planning and how you can think about a range of different scenarios and use leading indicators to make clear which one's coming up next. This is one of the really key ways that you can keep that agility, but in the constraints of a larger set of possibilities and within an overall budget. So that's some of the opportunities, but cracks can appear in that. And as you look for taking this data analytics route, and especially now coming into some of the topics that we'll talk about as a panel, there's some kind of pitfalls that can happen along the way. From a process side, many businesses are managed in silos by necessity, very different skill sets around some of those. But when you think in a siloed nature, it means that you can miss some of the synergies and some of the interactions that happen across functions. It also makes it harder to talk about the business in a single way in one language, and to also have a common language of performance across that business. So managing in silos is one of the key things to overcome. We've seen that being led by data rather than business, which seems counterintuitive to what we're talking about in data analytics, can also be one of the other pitfalls. What we mean by this, or what I mean by this, is that going for where you have the strongest data first, rather than going where the business need is greatest, and making sure that you can gather data, even if it's not as good as data you have in other areas, can actually mean that you take some wrong paths early on, where they don't have as much impact or are not well aligned to the business needs. And then not tracking the impact of your data initiatives is a really strong kind of contributor to not having the support from the senior stakeholders in the long run. On a platform side, siloed access to platforms, things that are only suitable for expert users and not being integrated within existing tools within the business, all serve as barriers to mass and wide adoption of the usage of these data analytics tools. So making sure that you're using platforms that are already part of the daily practice of your teams, or having a very extensive and very, very well integrated change management process to make sure that training, upskilling, new processes are demanding the use of new tools are some of the only successful ways we've seen very long-lasting change within businesses. And then from a people side, the disconnect between business and data teams can be one of the biggest barriers to real mass adoption of data analytics through the business and operational processes. So making sure that training and upskilling and the culture of data analytics is embedded across functions and not just within kind of core teams around CMI or around analytics. And then lacking autonomy through reliance on others is also another really strong way we've seen cracks kind of fall apart in data analytics. So making sure that whatever solutions that you're deploying and designing can actually be used by the end business owners, where they have autonomy in seeing the recommendations or the decisions that come out of those, can be a great way to make sure that you're having success. And so from our side as Ekimetrics, what we talk about in a data culture for success is something that is useful, that is built around the business, built around the operational need, is tracked and monitored in terms of making sure that you're getting the performance and the ROI, and that it's activated through operational tools that are used day to day. It has to be usable. That means industrialized by design, made sure that you can scale, something that actually really scales to a business-wide problem rather than just staying at a proof of concept level. It has the right data governance in effect to make sure that you have high standards both across security and in terms of the owners and the users of that, to make sure it's always being steered in the right direction. And then it has to be used. If you miss that used factor, then people aren't going to use it, and you're really missing out on a big opportunity there. So upskilling and talent management as part of a really consistent, really core way of making sure that you're driving that data culture within your teams, keeping the solution alive through continuous improvement, and making sure that interpretability is a really strong part of any solution you roll out. Means that you can take your business users on that journey and they can see where the results are coming from, and they can trust and believe in the origination of those recommendations. So that's how we talk about it as Ekimetrics. What I'm really happy to do is now open it up to our panel. So I'd love you to please introduce yourselves, just give us a brief overview of your role at the company, and then we'll dig straight into the topics and the discussion. So Alaric, over to you.
Great. Cheers, Matt. I'm Alaric. I am the marketing lead in the data science team in Heineken UK. So my role is all around developing our in-house coverage of advanced analytics across the marketing department, looking to leverage data science to optimize media execution, inform portfolio strategies, ranging optimization, and things of that nature.
Great, thank you. Peter?
Can you hear me at all?
Yes, we can. Perfect, Peter.
Perfect. That's an amazing bit of technology. Apologies. Yes, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Peter. I'm head of performance and insight at Morrisons, although apparently not great at being able to join webinars in the standard way, so apologies. Yeah, so I've been at Morrisons for about 15 months now, and I very much joined to kind of help the business on that journey to data enlightenment, I guess, kind of helping to put data very much at the heart of the business, make sure that the decisions that we make to serve our customers are all driven through data as best we can. So it's an interesting journey. Looking forward to talking a bit more about it this afternoon. But yeah, that's me, and thanks for having me on the panel today.
Great, thank you, Peter. And Matt, that's not going to be confusing at all, but over to you.
Yeah, well, it hasn't been so far, has it? Well, hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Matt Betes. I'm the corporate marketing director at TCC. I'm responsible for external comms, brands, and events here. And for those that don't know TCC, just to fill you in, we're lucky enough to work with a lot of the world's leading retailers across the globe, and we create loyalty solutions that grow sales and brand loyalty in store and online. And yeah, thank you, Matt, for having me. It's really great to be here as part of this discussion.
Great, thank you. So let's dig straight into it. And for the first kind of topic of discussion, we're going to think about those key trends in the grocery sector, how data analytics are supporting the response. And maybe we can start with you, Alaric, and you can just give us a sense of how your role has changed during the last year as we've gone through the kind of effects of the pandemic and what you've needed to do to respond to that.
Yeah, sure. So I being, leader in Beer Insider has faced somewhat of a different challenge to potentially the rest of grocery, in the sense that we've seen that sort of seismic shift in demand following the closure of pubs and hospitality for the most part of the last 10 months. So all of that consumption that used to go on in hospitality has moved into the home effectively. And what that's done is just completely changed the nature of our business and our sales channels. So what we've been facing over the last 10, 12 months has really been a crisis of supply, looking to meet all the demand that is now being channeled through grocery, where traditionally Heineken has been set up to deliver through both the on-trade and the off-trade. So what that means for myself and my role as a marketing data scientist is that where marketing would typically look for demand generation, that's no longer really the priority of the last 10 months. It's about how can we service that one sales channel to the best of our abilities given the circumstances. So I suppose instead my role and our role as data scientists has been to focus on cost savings, logistical support, thinking about how to get stock on shelves, and manage all those supply issues that go on or have been going on. So, and I think data scientists and data science assists in a lot of these areas. Within marketing, we think about how we cut costs in the most or with minimal impact. So where we can reduce our budgets across our brands, to think about focusing on our strategic priorities, and also just reducing costs out the door savings as well. So that's fundamental for us, thinking about how we can in-house and build up our own capabilities and prevent money going to agencies or to save money where we can in a time like this is really fundamental.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that across a lot of the industry, right? That just need to survive, cut cost, and make sure that you're delivering to your retailers as much as possible and servicing that sales channel. How do you see that focus shifting again as we look into 2021 and beyond, both into in terms of your role and what you're looking at doing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think what we thought, it just depends on the shape of the recovery. I think the way that we see 2021 is sort of split in two halves, where we have a heavily impacted period of the pandemic still to come, at least into Q1 and Q2. So our priorities will, for now, be focused still in cost saving through balancing this uncertainty. But then we need to look beyond. I guess one of the challenges that will exist for all data science teams is how we operate now when the history of our data has been broken. Patterns, trends, forecasts, all these models are now struggling to realign. So the focus for us will think about how we can lean into that problem and react in that sort of agile way, as you mentioned, how we can help demand planning through this time is fundamental. But as you mentioned, there are new challenges that have arisen, range rationalization being fundamental. So we need to think about how we can support in that area, how we can build up our portfolio and make sure that we create those refinements where we need to. And then finally for us, it's e-commerce. There's a whole world in which advanced analytics can play a role, and you're right, it's just been accelerated. So within a Heineken, it's where we need to now really look to develop and shift more time and resource.
Yeah. Okay. No, great. And that topic of how models have had to very rapidly adapt and then changing again into 2021, we'll pick up a bit later. But maybe now to move to you, Matt. Can you tell us a bit, with what you've seen as TCC around how shopper behaviours have changed over the last year?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, what a year, right? It's a lot of changes. Hard to sum up quickly, but certainly, I mean, within grocery retail, the way people have shopped has changed. What's important to them has certainly changed. Retailers have had to adapt, have had to change. It's you see different things across different markets, and I don't want to repeat what you said already, but certainly, digital shopping massively important now, both in frequency of existing shoppers, but new adopters as well, which have brought in a lot of potential margin issues for questions for retailers. One of the big trends that we've certainly seen pretty universally is that baskets have increased. So we're moving back to the time of on average one big sort of shop per week for families. Frequency is down, and certainly people are making more. I've called it like geography-led decisions about where they shop. For them. Again, retail's responded fantastically well, as you said. There's a lot of retailers investing in safe shopping practices quickly in fast response, and overall, I think grocery's been affected, but probably not as much as some industries. There's been some retailers that have had challenges. There's other retailers that have done well and that have shown record sales figures and have made gains. And I guess the question that we get a lot right now is, what's next? How do we keep the shoppers we've won, or how do we win back those we've lost? And loyalty is becoming more of a priority than ever.
Yeah. And that idea of moving a bit back to that big weekly shop is a really strategic question for how you approach the future as well, because it's really that the rise of convenience over the last few years has really led to that breakdown of the weekly shop into two 2, 3, 4 smaller kind of touch points through the week, but the way you service that, the way you think about your store portfolio, and the way you put your resources, very different if the future looks like people staying at home more, more of the big weekly shop versus people going wholesale back to offices, and thinking about that return to the need for convenience. So something really important to kind of consider. And you talks about the change of how to think about loyalty. So can you go a bit further into how brands and retailers on both sides can think about building loyalty as we look to the future, and what they need to think about differently in that space now?
Well, I think obviously future's hard to predict, right? But just as my opinion as a guess, I think when we're looking at loyalty, we've got to kind of look at what's going to happen next in terms of behavior. I think certainly, and again, only my opinion, but shopper austerity is going to be a big issue in the foreseeable future. Possible economic downturn as well, potentially that's going to affect how people shop. Price is going to probably become a more important driver in those circumstances, and that normally leads to higher shopper promiscuity as well, where people want to go where they're going to get when they've got less, they want to go somewhere where they're going to get more, and likewise that could lead to supermarkets continuing to suffer to discounters in that area. Growing importance probably in terms of basics and product choices again within that scenario. And what normally what we see tends to happen is that when there is this focus on price, that's also reflected in how retailers market, and sometimes you see price wars and this race to be the cheapest. I think the retailers that will win in the future will hopefully go beyond that. I think already, we're starting to see some really incredible shopper trends that are emerging. Themes like local beating global in terms of just the production of local produce, but this willingness to support suppliers as well. Community is huge right now, isn't it? The way that everybody wants to support children and their development, whether that's school, sports, cooking, enjoyment of human basics, nature. There's a huge amount of shopper trends that have emerged as that weren't there or weren't as strongly there before that are really important now. And sustainability, that's another one that I feel, whilst it's sort of overshadowed at the moment, it's probably going to be more important than ever, because we've all got this this feeling as a collective that hopefully we can conquer and overcome issues, and environment and well-being is all of our responsibility. So yeah, as we look at loyalty as a whole, I think it's going to be a mixture of who can juggle both the transactional needs of shoppers and the emotional needs as well, and come up with solutions that address both.
Yeah, no, great, thank you. And definitely one of the drivers of loyalty, especially in this period, is kind of the experience, which comes a lot from the operations, right? And how you're servicing your customers. And I know, Peter, that's something you've had a real focus on in the last year. So when you think about operations, what challenges have you faced in really making operations data driven over the last year and responding with the agility needed?
Well, I think the thing to say is retail is always fast. It's always been a very fast-paced game, but I think that pace has picked up in the last year. I think if we think back to last March when we were at the height of the first lockdown, we couldn't move product quick enough really to kind of service demand. And I think what that did is collectively across the piece, I think the supply chain elements did a fantastic job at making sure that we continue to feed the nation, and it was a very interesting time for us all, and that pace has carried on. And with that increased pace has been that real need to be really focused around the things that are going to add the most value, and the things that are going to make the most difference to customers. you know, in a climate where the country is looking to the supermarkets to continue to put food on the table during a very difficult period, we have to make sure that everything we do is driven by that customer lens, in terms of making sure that we don't do anything that's going to disrupt the supply chain. And so back to that point around priority, I found myself and my team have found exactly the same this year. We found ourselves having to almost do sort of metadata analysis. So we've almost been measuring processes so that we can have a much clearer view of the things that are going to bring the biggest benefit to us in the shortest time. So whereas previously a lot of our time was focused on building predictive algorithms for demand planning and what have you, we've almost had to take a step back and kind of wrap around this idea of which part of that do we need to change now and which can wait for later. So that kind of prioritization has probably been it's always been important, right? You know, clearly anybody that runs any kind of big scale process and project needs to be very clear on timing. But that kind of agility has been really important, and not only is the ability to be agile and be able to change direction quickly and pivot, but it's also understanding of the three options in front of me, which is the one that's going to be best. And I think you know, I'm very proud of my team in being able to provide insight to the business to say, well, actually, out of these three options, that one there probably looks like the best one, or actually, you know, these two are the same. And just a point on agility as well. I think there's a lot been written and a lot said around getting the best out of data science teams. And some of that is around protecting them in a way from the operation and giving them time to think. What's been really hard through this period is that as we've done more, we've wanted more from the data science teams. And there's been a real balance between being able to be agile and change and respond to how the situation is changing in the country and how the business is wanting us to adapt, but also giving the data scientists still time to think and plan and model. And I guess if answering your question, Matt, the biggest challenge I've faced is how do you kind of tread that tightrope by being agile enough that you can respond, whilst also enabling the team to be able to do their best work. That has been the biggest challenge, but one, thankfully, I think we've done some good work to try and overcome.
No, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Great perspective. And I think we've seen that definitely from some of our clients, like in the automotive sector, where suddenly they're not making cars anymore; they're making ventilators in their factories. Real change needed in terms of processes across the board, and how you really focus on prioritization to get the right things done. They're important right now, absolutely critical. And so maybe more of an open question for everyone to finish this topic. Where do you see the biggest impact coming from in the next years through creating these stronger cultures of data analytics? We can't quite hear you, Alaric. Sorry.
So classic. It's been 10 months. Anyway, no, I can speak to that. So, I from my perspective, I mean, grocery has been so for a long time. The industry has become highly commoditized. There are so many different providers of service supply chain, and also the marketing landscape as well. And as you said, the challenge that arises, you mentioned at the start, is that you end up with very siloed different tech stacks, ecosystems that exist in different departments. And nothing really talks to one another. So I think this comes when we look to scale advanced analytics and data science within an organization, that you really need a unified approach. You need platforms that are compatible, that offer that scalability. So from my perspective, I see the biggest impact probably coming from the advancement of cloud computing services like AWS and Azure that really offer the potential, the platform for scaling and unification. So I personally see that as playing a larger role into the future. I think it's just continuing to make data science more accessible.
I think, Alaric, just picking up on that point, that accessibility is really important. I think we've as data scientists, we've had a great sort of 5-10 years at building fantastic models and doing some cool stuff with science. Actually, our job now is to embed that into organisations in a way that it just becomes an enabler. It just becomes a thing that has to happen in order for businesses to be successful. And I can see that genuinely is kind of the next frontier, really, for where we go as data scientist leaders.
Yeah.
Great. No, thank you. So maybe to skip on to the second topic that we have, building the right culture, the teams and the processes to see impact from data initiatives. And I know this is going to answer as we go through some of the questions that we already have coming in from people like Stephen. So thank you for those. But Peter, you've set up a team at Morrisons over the last 18 months. Like, how have you found it? How did you approach it?
Yeah, it's been a really fantastic journey that we've started, and it's been great fun as we've gone. And I think when I step back and think about it, I'm really lucky to have inherited a number of people that just exceptional individuals, really talented at what they do. But actually, the opportunity there was to bring together groups of people who, on their own, were doing a good job, and actually by getting them to work as a team to do a great job. So I've brought certain people in. I've worked with kind of unexplored talent, if you like it, that was already in the business. And I was reading an article last week actually where it was talking about sort of that chief data scientist role being like a conductor, where your job is not necessarily to be the star performer on your own. Your job is to kind of bring everybody together to get the best out of the sound and to kind of get everybody playing at the same time and kind of responding to kind of the music and feeling. It was a great article actually, but my point is that's actually genuinely how I feel, in that actually my job is to get the best out of the team, and I think some of that is leading by example, some of that's doing things and showing the team how to do the kind of things I want them to do. Other times it's kind of leading from the back, where I'll push everybody forward and actually you've got to go at the pace of the slowest person, but know that they'll get there and the team will benefit. So I think it's been a really interesting process, and some of it has been about selecting the right people, but actually a lot of it has been about creating that right culture within the team, but also in the senior leaders around me to make sure they know what to expect of the team. But we can't do this overnight. I don't think that was ever the expectation, but just helping them understand what is realistic to expect of the team, so that everybody has a role, everybody has a place, and we feel part of something. So I could talk for ages and ages on this particular topic, but it's just been a brilliant process so far, and continuing to look forward to what the future has to offer.
Okay, no, great, really interesting perspective. And one of the really powerful things you talked about is the idea of unexplored talent within a team.
Yeah.
When you've seen that, how have you approached like reskilling or upskilling that real strong potential that you find to approach the new capabilities you want to build?
Yeah, I mean, some of that's just been interested in people. So I spent, a number of months just talking to people across the business, and every now and again you'll speak to somebody who's genuinely just a little bit excited about data, and actually it's almost like it's a guilty pleasure for them. They almost apologize to me that, oh yeah, I love spreadsheets, or I shouldn't. I'm a little bit embarrassed. And it's like, do you know what, that gives me that spark to know that there's more we can get from you, because you're the person that was doing pivot tables before everybody else. You're the person that knows exactly how to make a VLOOKUP work. And these are things that in their world are massive, but actually from a data science perspective, they're just, an expectation. So I think the key in my team is, not all data scientists have to be mathematicians or computer scientists. One of the stars in my team is a journalist, or was a journalist by trade. And the reason he is so good at what he does, he can ask the right questions. He knows how to get underneath those really difficult problems, because he just has a feeling for where things aren't quite right. And I think that was because of his journalistic training. He was sort of trained to think in that way. Same with historians, people who have been trained to look at building an argument based on all the available facts and bits of data. So I think it's about spotting that spark in people and recognizing that a lot of people don't know what they don't know about data science. And you can't give everybody the opportunity, because clearly, we haven't got time for that. But I think it is about trying to give those that have risen to the top of the kind of spreadsheet pool, if that's not a derogatory term, but giving them the opportunity to then make that leap. And that's where we've been so successful. We've been able to take people with the knowledge of the business, give them those additional skills, and they are now on that journey to become a proficient data scientist.
Okay, great. And the idea of the business and knowledge of the business being critical is a really important one in the success of these types of projects and integrating these solutions in the business. You know, there's a lot of talk of data translators or business translators. Do you think about those in your team? And then what are the traits that you've kind of identified that really make this strong business or data translator?
Yeah, so before I joined Morrisons, I actually worked for a data science agency, a bit like Ekimetrics, actually. And one of the things that we had in that organisation were account managers, account directors, and I've taken kind of my inspiration from that account management piece, really, and I've brought in one or two people into the team. As account managers, you know, we're not trying to create an internal agency. That's not what we're trying to do. But we do still have to manage stakeholders, and we do have to understand requirements and be able to show the value of the work that we've done back to the business. And so what I've done is I've taken people with an interest in data, but whose skill set is in people management, client management, relationship management, essentially. And I've given them the role of being the kind of translator in and out of the team. And that's worked brilliantly, because you know what, we've got to recognise that data scientists at their very core do not necessarily, not saying it's true of everybody, but they don't necessarily have all those skills needed to manage those stakeholder relationships. So what we've tried to do is make people's strengths be their strengths, and then bring people into the team to kind of pick up the gaps that we were aware of. So yeah, the translation part is critical. The algorithm is half the job. The other half is then translating the impact into something the business can see.
No, definitely. And so on the business side, I guess as more and more opportunities kind of emerge from data, the skills that you need on the business side are also changing to take the best advantage of them. I mean, Matt, from your perspective, you work a lot with shopper marketing and similar business functions. What are the skills you're seeing kind of being needed in those groups to take the best decisions from the data and the insight available?
I kind of agree with Peter in that, it's difficult to have, one sort of profile for a great shopper marketer from what I've seen. You meet lots of different people with different strengths in that area. I mean, I think having, and this is pretty basic, but I guess having robust data and insights up front is key to success in that area, isn't it? It's amazing still that isn't always the case. We see a lot in our business that retailers are employing, segmentation still really effectively, and it's a really good way for them to understand shoppers, getting the right mindset to make decisions. Shopper journey mapping, this idea of moments of truth. I mean, the other big thing as well that you see a lot is this deeper understanding of or recognition of shopper and consumer, which I think is also pretty key in that area. And yeah, I guess the ability to also, apart from recognizing areas of opportunity, but to be able to be part of the solution and as well is probably key to giving that function a successful voice in the business.
Okay, great, thank you. And maybe I'll skip on to topic 3 now as time is ticking, and I want to make sure we get to some of the questions from the audience as well. So final topic for the discussion we have is around taking the long view of performance in grocery to steer towards brands that perform over the long term and not just for now. So Matt, what's next for loyalty? How do you think you can see brands growing profitably for the long run?
Yeah, I think digital enablement, we've talked about that a lot. I think that's going to be it's a huge trend in loyalty and retail. It's going to continue to be important. I think I guess in terms of like short term, I guess it's kind of short term hopefully, but when the time's right to get people back into store, this trend we're seeing around bigger baskets, it's kind of back to best customer and making sure that the retailer is trying to capture their business as much as possible. When people are, and that's when people are comfortable to go back into stores. I mean, there's still a lot of real estate out there, right? I mean, it's not gone anywhere. So, it's going to be a huge objective for retailers. I think, I do think in terms of loyalty, like shoppers are more demanding of food retailers, just because I think there's this recognition that they can make more of a difference. So, in my view, long term, it's going to be, the ones that win in loyalty are going to be the ones that do both transactional and emotional really well. That they're going to show that they have the same values, the same things that are important to them as their shoppers, but also that they can say thank you, to these customers that spend a lot with them in a meaningful way. That also has the benefit of driving their sales as well. So I think, and then final point on that is that there's some really great examples out there retail that bring loyalty into their entire business. They have this ability to kind of step back and don't see it as an isolated comms exercise or a particular card or promotion, but kind of an ongoing journey with those shopper values at the center. And I think that's really the key to long-term success in this area.
No, definitely. Seeing loyalty not just as a coupon campaign or something, how it's embedded within the decisions you make. Definitely, yeah, really key. So Alaric, you talked earlier about models changing very quickly, clearly for COVID, and then how they're going to change again over the next year. Can we learn anything from the last year to take us forwards? Is everything from a modeling perspective going to change again? What can we take away from this time?
That's a hard one to answer, isn't it? I think, yeah, I mean that's the core challenge that we need to keep asking ourselves is how we can reflect on the performance of the last 10 months, the behavioural changes, and try to decipher what is a long-term shift and what is simply being forced due to the closure of different parts of our economy. And that's what we need to do really quickly when we begin to open up, is be able to evaluate those consumer behaviors and build them into your ways of working as soon as possible. I think that's the core element for us anyway.
Okay, no, great, thank you. And then Peter, second to last question, then we'll move on to some of the questions from the group. But how can operational teams think about the learnings from the past year as well? Do you see from a demand and from a service and delivery side, is everything going to need to change again as markets reopen fully?
I think it's just a learning that you've got to expect the unexpected. As data scientists talk a lot about unknown unknowns, don't we? When we're doing our best work, and I think from an operational perspective, in making the supply chain actually run, we've kind of got a plan now for things that we might never have done in the past. So this idea of contingency planning, we've all done it, and to a degree, we all kind of did it to a lesser or greater extent. But I think it's an essential part of business now, is being able to be able to respond to these shocks that you just can't expect. And I think that's probably the thing that comes out of it. But the final point I'd make is the one thing I've been very impressed with by Morrisons as a whole, just our ability to communicate through that crisis or through that period of uncertainty. And I think just being able to clearly and effectively communicate what might happen in the future and know that you can respond regardless. And give your staff and your colleagues and your customers that confidence. I think that is what I will take away from this and put into our future planning.
Okay. Oh, great. Thank you. So maybe I'm gonna switch to some of the questions we have from the group. We had Matt Lovell was asking a question earlier about to understand how to kind of go about that journey of building a data science function. I know that's one that Stephen as well was also asking. So can you I mean, Peter, you're further on in the journey with the big team, and Alaric, you're kind of at the beginning of the journey. What are the challenges you're seeing? How are you going about thinking about building those data science functions?
Well, I think if I pick that one, I hope I've answered a lot of that. So maybe Alaric, you've not had a chance to talk on that subject, so maybe that's one for you, and I'll just chip in afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the UK, the data science team we're quite a small in-house team at the moment, but I guess we feed into a global insights lab, which is based out of Amsterdam. So we, although we are beginning our journey in the UK, we do have the ability to leverage that to a degree. But I guess for us, the journey for my team has really just been getting started. You have to just get some sort of traction. I think, as Peter said earlier, within Heineken, getting senior sponsorship is essential, making sure that it's driven from the top. Otherwise, you just end up similarly with siloed sort of cottage industries of advanced analytics within your organization. So you need to make sure you have those stakeholders that buy in. For me as well, a crucial thing for data science to be able to actually play a role in an organization is that you need to be aware of how your organization works, how your departments are structured, how decisions are made. So within marketing, it's a very, very agile, way of working in general for most marketing departments. So understanding how you can effectively collaborate to drive change has been crucial for us to really prove that value. And then the last point I would touch on, again, feeding off what Peter said, accessibility. Every role within grocery should be leveraging data because it's just so available and it's so rich that if an organization driving from the top can get people to be more literate in how to interpret data, how to work with it, what to ask from BI teams, from data science teams, and how to interpret outputs. That's also fundamental through tooling, courses, or whatever else. Great to get people to be more and more autonomous.
Great. Anything you want to add to that across the panel?
Nothing more from me. No, that was a very good answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Alaric. So a question from Ben as well. So aimed at Peter, but I think broadly can talk about is the shift to e-commerce kind of seeing a downturn in spontaneous purchase. So he's kind of asked it through, are you seeing a trend in customers ordering the same basket in each online shop and therefore a downturn in spontaneous purchase? Do you think that is that something you're seeing? What do you think is going to happen with the increasing load on e-com?
I think it's always a risk, isn't it, for e-commerce? And I'm not really in a position to comment about exactly what we've seen, but one of the questions we would always ask ourselves is you have that opportunity in store to do some great merchandising, to put fantastic promotions in front of customers. It's a bit harder in one sense online, but actually I'd probably flip that around and say actually the e-commerce process gives you the opportunity to be very smart with how you get targeted offers in front of your customers. So I think it's definitely a risk, but I think there are strategic things that we can do as a retailer to try and get round the problem. And I think it presents us with a really great opportunity to try and help serve our customers better, actually, because in that e-commerce channel, if we can understand what customers want, we can then help provide the opportunities for them to spot something new. So in our e-commerce journey, for example, we have the final stage in our checkout process brings up products for our customers that they might not have thought of. So it's trying to speak to that kind of unprompted purchase that you might get in a retail store. So yeah, apologies I can't comment specifically on our own performance, but hopefully that just gives a little bit of a window into how we might think about it.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's this really interesting challenge in e-commerce, as he talks about how do you replicate some of the occasions for spontaneous demand or for highlighting something unseen or unknown to consumers in what is much more of a driven search-led journey when you come to e-commerce. Really interesting challenge to kind of unpick in the the next months and years as well. I think we've come to time, so all I can say is thank you very much to the panelists for sharing your experience, your expertise, and your time with us today. Really great. For the attendees, this has been recorded, and you'll have the ability to kind of go back and play back the webinar if you want to review anything or watch it again. We do have some other webinars coming up in the next few months. So we have a webinar that we'll be releasing with ISBA in the UK, and also please do come to my talk at the Festival of Marketing on the 22nd of March as well. Thanks very much, everyone, for your time. Thanks to the panelists once again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks.